your next big win, where we are focusing on the blue ocean. And we'll be thinking about, is your business in the blue ocean and the red ocean? We'll be explaining what those terms mean. And it's actually a really insightful and useful way of thinking about how you compete, how you stand out from the crowd, and what you offer. So don't want to give too much away right now, but we've got some interesting conversations coming up, haven't we, Mahmood?
We have, and we don't, as again, we have no idea what each other person is going to say.
No idea what I'm going to say either. No, I have. I've done some thinking. So come and join us, and we'd love to hear from you. Which ocean do you think you're in? Listen in and let us know in the comments as we go forward. But while we get started, we're just going to hear some music.
And as they say, we're back in the room. It's amazing, actually, Joe, because I think before we started working together, I hadn't actually really come across the concept of blue ocean, red ocean here. I'm doing some. We've talked about it before. It's prepped there. I think before we started, by the way, folks, we've introduced a third ocean colour, by the way, which we'll talk about later on here. If you've heard of the strategy blue ocean, red ocean, just let us know in the comments. If you are in a situation where you have competition, let us know, and then we will share our thoughts. And again, I've got no idea what Joe's going to say, except we're going to be talking about oceans.
Yeah, well, you say you've no idea, but before every show, you write down your predictions, and then everyone, when we come off air, Mahmood holds his predictions up and is usually absolutely right. So I think he does. It's some sort of mind-reading, telepathic ability. Either that, or I'm very predictable, so I'm not quite sure which one it is. But let's get started with blue ocean and red ocean, and what on earth are we talking about? So if you imagine that you are in somewhere amazing like the Maldives or Mauritius, and you've got all of this turquoise sea all to yourself, it's all twinkling in the sunshine, all beautiful, and there's not anybody to be seen for miles around, that's a metaphor for what we mean in terms of the market. So if you're in the blue ocean, it means you've got all that lovely market space to yourself, because what you've got to offer is so innovative, so out there, and certain people really, really want it, but they can't, your competition can't replicate it, right? So you've got that lovely advantage of having all that sea to yourself. Whereas the red ocean is red, full of fish eating each other. It's red because it's bloody, it's fish eat fish, it's predatory, it's all the thing, really murky. And what that means is, from a metaphor perspective, is that in business, you've got lots of people doing very, very similar things, just trying to gobble each other up and compete on price, and driving margins down and down, so that some players fall out of the market. Yeah, there's not enough room to sustain anybody. So the two metaphors for opposite ends of, and Mahmood has come up with a third colour, which doesn't exist in the book. The book is by Kim and Morborn, Blue Ocean Strategy, but you've come up with your own colour, haven't you?
Because I think in terms of that positioning, the sort of the background to the whole philosophy is about when companies do their normal strategic planning, they start off with the pestle analysis, what's going on, where they can differentiate themselves. And this whole idea of a blue ocean is to actually get away from that. So that idea of moving away from Skegness and moving more to, say, the whiter sands of Barbados or whatever, is purple. And it's the amalgam of the two, because I think in realistic terms, and I've also come up with some thoughts about why I think there's some critiques and some flaws, if you want to use that term, in that strategy, the blue versus red, is that a lot of organisations, I think, will tend to sit between the two, where they'll dip their toe into that blue ocean as opposed to embrace it fully for a number of reasons, which I'm going to sort of comment on later on. So I think actually that amalgam of those two oceans come together, and you told me that actually, according to colour mixing, purple is the colour that comes out from it.
Yeah, it is, which is one of our brand colours as well, isn't it? Purple. So yeah, it's so if you imagine the blue ocean and the red ocean are at opposite ends of a spectrum, a continuum, or whatever, then to get into the blue ocean is a very lucrative place to be when you get it right. But usually from an innovation point of view, you need to do and try lots of things before you actually arrive there. It's very, very unusual for a business to have a blue ocean idea that just flies straight away. You know, there are usually things that you need to do, because the more out there, the more unusual something is, usually the greater risk there is in launching that thing. And also it usually takes more time, effort, cost to develop that thing, to do the R&D and get the product or service right. So getting a blue ocean product, like the iPad when that first came out, I suppose to an extent, like ChatGPT, although others are following quickly. Cirque du Soleil is a classic blue ocean company. So they're the people that do the acrobatic, operatic, musical theatre, drama stuff. They've created their own genre, which makes them very, very blue ocean. And then the red ocean, obviously. So the purple is probably the best place to be, but it's really about how you think differently about your business and start to use some of the building blocks to differentiate, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it's very much a reflective culture. I think the Circus Soleil is an interesting example because they were actually moving away from the conventional circus audience of children and families and all the rest of it, and thought, actually, we're going to develop a concept and a product and a service and an offer that actually goes against the conventional customer audience groups there as well. So that's a great leap of faith and innovation. And I think, I personally speak, I'll make a thing that I think you love the blue ocean because it has those elements of innovation, has those elements of creativity, has that element of moving away from your comfort zone and all the rest of it. And I think probably like anything else that you do that moves away from what you're conventionally used to doing, that moving into a different direction, different focus, different viewpoint. Yes, there's extra levels of risk. Yes, there's extra resources that you need. Yes, there's different ways that you've got to look at certain things. And if it pays off, and R&D projects do fail, if it pays off, then obviously you've got a great financial as well as commercial advantage over everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about the principle and moving towards blue ocean. So yeah, it's amazing if you can use this and get a truly blue ocean product or service. What you can do is use it to get a slightly more blue ocean. You know, you don't have to be completely, you can be purple, as you would say. And the thing about blue ocean and red ocean thinking is, because it's also just as risky, right, to be in the red ocean, where your margins are being driven down, everybody's offering the same. You're commoditized, you know, a tin of tomatoes that is no different from any other tin of tomatoes. So to actually use blue ocean thinking principles to elevate yourself above the competition, but you know, you don't have to go that far as being the next iPad or whatever, is a really good thing to do. The other thing about blue and red ocean thinking is with blue ocean thinking, normally in other models, they say that you can either differentiate on quality or you differentiate on price. With blue ocean thinking, you can actually combine cost, price, and quality as well. You don't have to choose. You can work on them both. We've got some examples we can talk about in a bit.
So by very nature, anyway, blue ocean thinking is about actually disturbing the norms and actually not going by received conventional wisdom. It's about moving away from what you might do in a very competitive environment. From my perspective, I think there are words of caution here. And the reason I'm talking about purple, by the way, because I think if you're an established company that's looking to grow, develop something new, unique, generate higher value there, is you may be already in an existing marketplace which is very competitive, which is very traditional, very difficult to do anything innovative in that very sort of mature marketplace. So as you make that transition to look at something outside of that, you're going to probably continue with what generates those cash flows for you while you look to explore actually that sort of that blue ocean.
Yeah, it's about creating brand new market space that nobody's tapping into yet. That's the blue ocean versus the red ocean, which is you're already in a pretty crowded space where there's loads of other players. And of course, if you're a startup, you know, to get your and you haven't got a portfolio of products or services, then so really thinking through and making sure you can fund and doing really good value proposition work if you are really intent on getting into the blue ocean is important.
It's an interesting thing, because I think that's probably one of the drivers behind why, for example, in the world of IT and software, why the big companies like Facebook, Meta, Google, all the rest of it like to gobble up those very startup innovative companies here, because they are the blue ocean thinkers. They can carry on doing what they do as monoliths and all the rest of it. And when they see that opportunity, they're like little incubators that are going on, it seems. And then actually, when that time is right, they will then acquire them for for that potential that they've got there.
Yeah, and those incubators need funding injections to scale and grow, don't they? So it's sort of this interesting relationship where people start something, sell it, or get investment into it, and then the more established company takes it forward. So what we can get from the blue ocean approach is some tips for competitive differentiation. So you don't have to take it to that level, as we've said, but you can use some of these tips. And there are some brands like Premier Inn, for instance. So Premier Inn, if you're watching from overseas, is it's a budget hotel chain, but it's budget, but with a very consistent quality, and it focuses on very specific things. And how you get into the blue ocean, or more towards blue ocean, to be more purple, is by really thinking about your value, what's something they call a value curve, and there are 4 actions that we do to take those. So, Mahmood, would it be helpful if we walk through those?
Yeah, let's do that.
Step thing, yeah. So, so the first thing to think about is, what could you eliminate for your product or service that the competitors offer, right? So what could you completely remove? With Premier Inn, have you stayed in a Premier Inn, Mahmood?
Several times, actually. I like the product. I like the brand.
I like them very much, because you know what you're going to get wherever you are in the country.
It's the McDonald's of the hotel industry.
Yeah. So what would you say Premier Inn don't offer at all that other standard hotels offer?
Interesting. I'm just trying to think. Last time I spent time in the Holiday Inn here. Do you know what? Off the top of my head, I'm going to go for something like check-in. Yeah,
so they can check you in, but they've got automated check-in.
Yeah.
But there's no minibar in a Premier Inn room. There's no phone. There's no anymore. There's no room service. There's no porter services. There are no. So they've taken away. They've eliminated a lot of stuff around the edges that you get in a standard hotel. So that's the first thing, is you think about what could you eliminate that other people offer. But it's got to be something that your target customer will not miss.
So it's not a value added. It's a non-value added. It's a non-value added thing as far as the customer's concerned.
Yeah. Like, okay, well, it'd be nice to have those things, but we can live without it. They're not important to us. The next step is to do reduce. So what could we still do, but either not do as well or do less of that our customers do? So if you're in a Premier Inn room, Mahmood, what do they offer that isn't as good or there's less of than in a standard hotel? Are you all right, by the way, being my,
of course I could defer. I would probably say, let's see, recollection. I stayed in a Premier Inn a few months ago. They still have got the teas and coffees upstairs, as far as I'm aware. Maybe not the range. We know they don't have the minibar. Because the last Premier Inn I stayed in was it Newcastle?
Okay, I'll give you a prompt then.
Yeah.
How good and how big are the towels?
Well, that's a good point, actually. They're not significantly large. So I'm going to go they're functional.
They're functional, yeah. So they've reduced. They're not big, fluffy, What about the toiletries? How good are the toiletries?
The toiletries, actually, they're not free flow. So they're actually either in big dispensing containers. So you don't actually have that basket of the individual items.
Yeah. So they still offer you toiletries, but it's basic stuff and you've got to work hard to get it out. So you might as well really take your own. And same with the toilet paper and stuff like that, right? So they offer things like that, but they've reduced them. They've reduced the quality. They've reduced the size. So we've got eliminate. What can you eliminate? But actually, it's okay. People either think, I'll take my own shower gel, or the loo roll's not great, but it's fine, and the towels will do. We're only here for a night or two. Yeah. So it's still got to be things that don't. And then they think, Okay, so what could we raise? So it's called the ERRC grid. What could we raise? What could we do better than the competition do that's really important to our customers?
Well, I would say, oh, sorry.
Oh, go on. No, go.
Okay. Well, if I base it on having stayed there and I base it on the advertising campaign that emphasises those elements, I think the thing they're actually raising is the actual quality of the sleep, the quality of the bed.
Yes. So they use Hypnos beds. You've got a choice of pillows and duvets, and they really invest in the bed and the good night's sleep, which leads us on to the fourth thing. So you've got to think, what could you raise? What could you improve that matters to the customers? And then the fourth thing is, what could you create that nobody else is offering or nobody else is doing? And Premier Inn created a good night guarantee, where if you don't get a good night's sleep, you get your money back, because they know that people go there and want a good night's sleep. They want consistent stuff. They also raise the standards and the consistency that you would get in a budget hotel. You know, they make it cleaner and more consistent than other chains. So by doing this combination of things, what Premier Inn did when they first launched was to create a new value curve, and that distinguished them from other hotels in the market and made themselves very attractive to their target, and were able to grow quite rapidly. Sorry, Mahmood. Sorry.
No. I think personally speaking, I think as you're going through that, and I'm sort of connecting with it, I'm thinking that's wonderful application of understanding your customer from Premier Inn.
Yeah.
Identifying what it is the customer wants and what the customer values in that price point. Thirdly, emphasising those elements, and then saying, and I would say probably very similar to like a low cost company that's effectively that works on a cost base. You make things as efficient as possible. You eliminate all the stuff that doesn't actually enhance the customer experience there to make it more financially viable as well, which I really like. As far as the background is concerned, did this follow a change in management, as far as you know, Jo, or was this existing management? What made them change?
I don't know, and I don't think it was a change. I think it was a growth strategy, because this was, and you know, if you're watching and you've got different facts to this, then do correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is this is Whitbread.
Yeah.
And Whitbread, of course, own Costa. So it's about finding gaps in the market and saying, actually, there's plenty of standard hotels and posh hotels out there. There's plenty of really crappy budget, you know, grubby hotels that are a bit ick. But there's actually not a good quality, consistent, decent quality budget hotel there for, you know, for average people, for contractors, you know, for people on business, for families going to events and things. There's nowhere that's good and solid for them to stay on a budget. And they found a gap in the market, as they did do with Costa Coffee as well. And then they were able to grow really quickly. So I don't know the history to it, but I think, you know, they're four questions we can all ask ourselves, whatever business we're in, whether you're a solopreneur, a consultant, or whether you manufacture 1 billion widgets every year. We can all ask ourselves those four questions and get the answers together and put them into a combination that makes us more purple, takes us towards the blue, but in a really good way. Now, the thing is, of course, the Premier Inn is very copyable. Others have tried that formula, but Premier Inn got there first, do it better, and do it with the greatest control. So although there are other copycat brands, nobody's doing it as well or as successfully.
I mean, I think what it demonstrates, I think it's a great example that I think a lot of people can connect to as well for their own businesses, is number one is the consistency there. And that's why I would say it's like the McDonald's of the hotel world, because whatever you say about McDonald's, you know that wherever you go, within reason, you know what to expect, you know the service standards you're going to get, and that's replicable. So that must require a great big cultural change, procedure manuals, processes, training, investment. Secondly, it's actually got a good look as well. So even though it's a budget market, you don't actually feel you're going into a budget hotel. And I've stayed in hotels where even the cockroaches have left, as well as going to hotels where it's much more expensive, and you don't actually get a feel actually that it's actually a budget hotel. Just like if you go to like an, it feels like a pile them high, sell them cheap type concept. So I think they've done remarkably well. And all the marketing, the very fact I knew is the comfort of the bed, that for them it seemed to be the main selling point here, is coming across in the messaging as well.
Yeah, and they had the big campaign, didn't they, with Lenny Henry,
Yeah.
So again, if you're from overseas, Lenny Henry is a famous, well, sort of reasonably famous comedian. He's done a lot of great work for charity as well since he's, paused his comedy career. But they had a big name fronting that and having a lovely night's sleep. So that was good. But I think we can do a lot with those 4 questions. And when you stop and think about them for your own business, and like you, Mahmood, been in workshops with all sorts of businesses and having these conversations, they seem pretty straightforward questions, but they're quite difficult to answer for your own business. So just as a reminder, what could you raise? What could you create? What could you eliminate? And what could you reduce? To just, and that creates a lovely combination. And that's how you can differentiate on price and quality, which is exactly what Premier Inn did.
100%. So what do you think that, in terms of, I've got my own feelings on this one, what are some of the limitations on the blue ocean, red ocean approach?
I think the limitations is that people think it's one or the other, and they don't see the degrees of, I see it as as a continuum. And I think they are pretty challenging questions to answer. The key thing with all of these models is you've got to understand your customer. You've got to really know what problems you're solving for the customer and what the customer wants and what the customer will respond to. All of these models are great, but you've got to do that piece about the customer up front. What about you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things coming up. And before we leave the Premier Inn behind, by the way, one thing I like about that particular example, and people who do the strategy very well, is they're not trying to be everything to everybody. So they know they're not going to get the high-end hotel visitor, which is fine for them. They know they're not going to get the really, can you do it for under a tenner type customer? They know exactly who they're after, and they know some are going to be disappointed. And I think I see this so many times, I'm sure you must do as well in business, that businesses try to be everything for everybody. And when you do that, you've got more danger of getting run over than if you just focus on a particular segment or segments there as well. Limitations, I think it's for anything. If you try anything new, you can't. I 100% agree with you on you've got to know your customer, what their pain points are, what they value, what they like. But I think it's the data. You need the data. You need that. I think data's sexy anyway. But if you don't have the data, if you don't have the resources, and you don't have the investment and the risk appetite that goes with that leap of faith that says I'm going to move away from where I am at the moment, then effectively you're just not going to have a strategy that's going to work very well.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you've got to know what that is, and then you've got to execute brilliantly as well. And consistency really matters, but brilliant consistency also saves money, because you'll reduce customer complaints and those sorts of things, and it'll be cheaper to implement because everything looks the same. You've got one training program, it's the same for everybody, and all of those things. You can get really good economies of scale, which enables
100%.
you to offer better value to customers as well and protect your margin.
Yeah, great point. And that economy of scales, folks, by the way, it's just if you're going to continue doing something, you repeat it, you will find you'll get some cost advantage creeping in there, and your bank balance and your profitability will thank you for it as well.
Yeah. So, what examples of blue ocean and red ocean do you like, Mahmood? When you were thinking about it, what struck you as being really interesting?
I think what I like about it, because I think there are certain marketplaces, depending where you are, it's a bit simplistic. But for me, when I look at these models, it's not per se that is the perfect answer. I just like the fact of if you continue to do the same thing again and you're not moving forward, then you've got to look at what you're doing and you've got to try and give that a little bit of a wobble as well. Yeah. So I like the innovation. I think one of the things that people have got to consider, like with anything, if you try it new, there is a risk of it not working. So just like any R&D doesn't automatically mean it's going to work. So as you said, other people have tried the Premier Inn idea, it hasn't worked, it's going to fail. So if you have a fear of failure, if you want to use that term, then this is probably not the approach for you. Other things that I can see it's probably working in, I think it's ripe for opportunity, that blue ocean thinking in lots of things like professional services that are being delivered, how they're delivered. Conventionally, it used to be, and I think the lockdown, COVID actually brought a lot of that blue ocean thinking out into the fore. So if I think about one of the sectors I do a lot of work in, like the arts and creative there, conventionally that online streaming, that online delivery of performances, it used to be literally within the theatre or the performance space, and then suddenly that came on and they adapted very well. And so that sort of innovation of how you deliver an experience virtually was what I thought was a good example of blue ocean thinking.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I like to use these models as like prompts, you know, it's almost idea generating tools to see what you can come up with and what you can play around with as well. So it's worth for you watching at home or at work or wherever you are to have a look at the blueoceanstrategy.com website, because there are quite a few case studies and tools and things. There's a toolkit on there. You might want to get the Blue Ocean Strategy book, but it's just, I think it's so important. I was talking to a professional services company, and they are growing like mad. Fantastic growth, really brilliant growth, and the way they're growing is by tackling client service and recruitment and people in a completely different way from other professional services firms in their space. And they're just doing it all very, very differently. And, and they're doing, and some of these things are really simple, don't cost a lot. It's just sometimes a question of a change of mindset.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I think they're great idea generators.
So, Jo, before we sort of start to wrap up the prog, what one tip would you give to people about if they think, oh, I like the idea of this blue ocean, I want to sort of try and apply that to my own business? What's the one single tip that you would give them to try and minimise the idea of not working, i.e. giving it more success?
Yeah, I think it's target a specific customer. And the way I do that sometimes is to think about real customers and maybe merge 2 or 3 into, and think of different aspects but think about what they've got in common and really target that customer and make sure that you test your ideas with the customer before you spend too much money, and do all the lean innovation things, test fast, fail fast, learn fast, go again, that we talk about quite frequently on here.
Yeah, I like it. I like that.
What about you?
I would probably say, apart from the KYC that we've talked about, you mentioned about knowing your customer and what it is for them, is data. Make sure you've got the systems that actually support your opinions, and you've actually got some good, valuable, usable data that underpins that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. It'd be really good to do a show actually on an intuition versus data.
Oh.
We're going
to have this discussion offline, folks.
We will, yes, we will. Yeah. So, Blue Ocean Strategy. Hope that's been useful. Let us know which ocean you are in. If you'd like help becoming more purple, then you know where we are. We're always really happy to help, and we'd love to hear from you.
And hop onto the website, folks. There's a beautiful quiz on there to try to assess your own leadership styles and all the rest of it. And we will see you anon. We thank you very much for your company. If you've got any more further comments to make, that's the old hashtag replay. We'll pick them up. And until then, have a good week, folks.
See ya.
See ya. Let's do that.